Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the What's the Point podcast, where we get straight to the point on topics and trends relating to data center, cloud, disaster recovery, and security. Today's topic is on maximizing uptime. We all want it, but do we actually know how to achieve it? Why are so many organizations falling victim to unexpected downtime and failing to meet their uptime goals? With attacks like ransomware, DDoS attacks, and disasters like hurricanes, frozen infrastructure, and forest fires causing downtime, how can businesses protect their vital applications and customer data while reducing the impact of an outage? Today's guest, Matt Watts, NetApp's Chief Technology Evangelist, will speak with us about the looming threats to uptime, whether or not the cloud is the solution, and advice on combating downtime. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Yep, great to be with you, Matt. Looking forward to our chat.
So we can jump right into it. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest threats to downtime in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you mentioned a few in your kind of introduction, and so if I was to pick the top three, I think the one that is just most topical at the moment is ransomware. It really is the kind of the scourge of what we have to deal with in IT right now, and it's affecting everything. We've seen recent events. It's very topical from where you are at the moment. I mean, it's just happened, but it's everywhere. It's very top of mind for people. How do we protect short-term, long-term, and build platforms and technologies that enable us to deal with ransomware? It is not going away. And what we've witnessed over certainly the last 12, 18, 24 months is it's becoming more sophisticated. Whereas, 12, 24 months ago, a lot of people would say, take your snapshots and that's your ransomware protection in place. That just isn't the case anymore. We are now starting to see these attacks are sophisticated enough to understand what is being used at the back end and work out ways around being able to use technologies like snapshots. So ransomware definitely kind of right up there on the top of the list and becoming more sophisticated. And that kind of goes into that whole sophistication piece, which is, it's as these things evolve. We talked about the fact that they're starting to understand what's at the back end. What they're also starting to do is lay dormant. So you may think you're protected. You may think that it hasn't happened to you, therefore everything is good. There is every possibility that it's sat in the background waiting. They're building delays into these ransomware attacks now, such that you don't even know. And it isn't that you haven't done something, or maybe you have protected yourself right now, but were you protected 6 months ago when the ransomware actually struck and sat there laying dormant, waiting for some sort of trigger event or some trigger date to happen? And then I think that the third one, which is and I hate to say this because we're all a bit sensitive to it, but people and a lack of automation. If you go through some of the big reasons of why we see downtime in the industry, many times it's accidental. It's people, we're only human. We make mistakes. I remember as a system administrator, and I'm sure some of the people watching this will have done it. You've sat there on the server and you typed the shutdown command and you suddenly realized, I was telnetted into a server, wasn't I? And you just shut down a server somewhere. It happens. So I think removing the manual processes from a lot of technology, a lot of kind of the way that we manage technology, significantly increasing the levels of automation, I think is a way of removing some of those unfortunate manual errors that just happen because we're only human.
Agreed. So with these advanced threats and these advanced attacks that are constantly evolving, you often hear businesses pointing to the cloud as a possible solution. What are some of the benefits of the cloud when it comes to maximizing your uptime?
So I think we've been through several kind of phases with the cloud. I think, some people sort of felt, is the cloud going to be as secure? Or, there were some people who feared that, if we put our data in the cloud, are we compromising ourselves? The reality is the cloud vendors spend more on security than than small countries, right? That's the kind of level of spend that they're putting into this. So what they are investing into security and protection and encryption and all of these kind of capabilities is way beyond the scope of most mere mortals and the organizations that we work for. So I think it's an element of the answer. I think they have the tools, the capabilities. They remove some of the threat vectors, but you still have to be thinking about it. They're not protecting your data. You still have to take care of, is my data protected? Is it recoverable? Is it across multiple regions? So there's still a lot of things that you still have to take care of. But I think like I say, it does remove some of the attack vectors as well. And I think the other thing to add to that is that with cloud being kind of off premises, it does also remove some of the manual errors. I remember, I'll just tell you a very quick story just because it kind of goes back to the shutdown command. I used to work with a friend, and we were on site at a customer, and we were doing an upgrade. They had a test environment and a production environment, and they were in the racks alongside each other, not labeled, unfortunately. And I remember my friend had gone into the data center, and I looked through the data center window, and I could see him kind of trying to reach his phone. He eventually reached his phone and phoned me up, and he said, "Matt, we need to get everybody off the system." And I said, why? What had happened is he pressed the power button on the production array instead of the test array to do a recycle of the power. Now, in the old days on these systems, the power doesn't go off until you take your finger off the power button. So he'd hit the power button, realized it, phoned me in the other room to say, we need to get everybody off the system. So we literally spent the next 10 minutes getting everybody off the system, getting all the data saved, and then allowed him to take his finger off the button so that we could shut the systems down. So stupid example, but it ties the two things together. When you own the equipment, it's on your premises, and you've got people involved, the cloud takes a lot of that away, and those potentials for accidents and kind of accidental damage.
Great story. So the cloud means a lot more than it used to. There isn't just one single cloud. It's usually various cloud platforms with different uses and different functions. How would a business manage all that complexity to achieve those uptime goals?
And this is a very topical one as well, because I spend all of my time not just with NetApp customers, but just with companies in general across the world and in different industries. And I think the big shift I've seen over the last 12 to 24 months is the move beyond the one cloud to the multiple clouds. It really feels like people got comfortable with their first cloud, whether that was Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. And now that they have that level of comfort, they're starting to look to the second or even the third cloud, because there's a real recognition that different clouds offer different values for different environments, different applications, different users. Microsoft is very much seen as the kind of enterprise application analytics cloud, AWS for the developers, Google for AI. It's a little bit black and white, but what we're seeing then, of course, is they're all different. So as you kind of think about how do we deal with data protection, security, encryption, ransomware, backup, disaster recovery in Microsoft, it's going to be different when you start to think about how do you do those same things inside Amazon. And it's going to be different when you start thinking about how do you do those same things inside Google Cloud Platform. And whilst each cloud is relatively simple, they're all different. And I think that's what we're starting to witness now, is that complexity is creeping back in because you've got this diversity, this kind of level of choice. And that's very, very much something that kind of NetApp have been focused on with our kind of cloud volumes capability, is to try and bring that consistency across multiple clouds such that you're not having to think, oh, have we done backups? Are we doing disaster recovery? Have we dealt with encryption? Have we dealt with compliance? If we can take care of all of that in a consistent way, it gives people the chance to focus on the stuff that they need to focus on.
Excellent. So with that said, with your expertise, what is some advice you would give on the best way to combat downtime and kind of reach those uptime goals that these organizations need to achieve?
So I think there's kind of several things, and in no particular order. I think the first thing is just be aware that you always have to plan for it. It sort of goes back to the cloud thing. There was almost a view, I think, that as companies went to Microsoft 365 or they went to Salesforce or, pick your SaaS application, that it was all just taken care of. And that simply is not the case. And I think people have started to realize now that just because you have a SaaS application being delivered to you, which is cloud, you still have to be thinking about your availability, recoverability, your protection. All of those things don't go away. They're still your responsibility. So I think being aware that as you start to think about your cloud platforms, your SaaS platforms, all of that stuff, all of that recovery security capability, that is all still things you have to plan for. And it becomes increasingly important as you go to multiple clouds, I think is one that I would say, that's very high up the list. The second thing, you are going to get hit by ransomware. That's just unfortunately the way of the world. There is too much of it out there to think that you're going to be the lucky one. You're not. So you have to have a plan as to how you're going to mitigate what happens. And I think on the ransomware side of things, beware of vendors promising you the kind of the silver bullet solution, because there isn't one. So when your vendor comes in and says, we give you snapshots, therefore you're immune to ransomware, it's rubbish. Ransomware is a multifaceted, multi-dimensional approach that you have to be thinking of, who is getting access to our systems? Do we do zero trust authentication? Do we have snapshots? Do we have worm technology so that we're actually locking stuff down so that it is truly immutable? So you have to plan for ransomware. No one has the golden or the silver bullet, that single solution. It is kind of multi-pronged. And then I think, I kind of put the last one, don't take anything for granted, which I think sort of reflects back onto some of the things that I've said before. When you look to a cloud provider, you look to a software as a service provider, you look to kind of these vendors who are going to deliver solutions to you, please don't make the assumption that it's suddenly everything is their responsibility, that they're the ones that are going to take care of everything, they're going to make sure it's available and recoverable. Some of them will, but the majority of them, that's not the case, and they're very clear that that's your responsibility as the consumer.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk about downtime, ransomware, and how to achieve this uptime that we're all trying to achieve as businesses. So we appreciate you taking the time.
It was an absolute pleasure to be here chatting with you, Matt. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
For our viewers, if you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe to our TierPoint YouTube channel. Thank you.